Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
Doing great. I am enjoying the weather. It's finally came back around, and it's been a busy week, but getting through it, and I'm glad that it's halfway through here. So,
sure, yeah.
What about yourself? How are you doing?
Same, man. Same. Just trying to keep my head above water. I got a lot of activity going right now on several listings that I have, so that's been great. And for those of you guys who are listening on Apple Podcasts, Jeff actually just installed a fish tank. So I'm watching the fish tank right now. It seems like a pretty cool thing. So, what fish have you included in there, Jeff?
For fish keepers out there who might be interested in commercial real estate, I just have a bristle nose pleco and a neon flame gourami at the moment. I moved to this new house, so a lot of the fish I gave away to new homes prior to the move. So these are just actually two new fish to me, so that I just put in there, and I'm slowly growing the tank. So the community per se, 2-man thing, and they're a great team right now. So they're working together. And it's speaking of a great team in the commercial real estate broker side of things. Senna and Chuck I'd like to introduce to them that they are a great team, great pair that work together. Chuck has a couple decades of experience, and Senna, he's been in the business for what some of us would say a short time, but he's gained a wealth of knowledge through mentorship through Chuck, and it's great to see the perspectives of how commercial real estate has evolved and how it's continuing to grow from each side, because Chuck brings in all the experience, and Senna's actually learning as he goes. He's still an experienced agent, but he's still learning, and so is Chuck in ways as the new technology begins. And I'm just super excited for you guys to hear both sides of the coin of commercial real estate brokerage. Is there anything you'd like to add?
So actually, Senna reached out to me through LinkedIn several months ago, and so we've been in dialogue for several months. And he's obviously been in the business for about 4 years, and brings a new perspective on how to approach the brokerage side. And then Chuck, is just an impressive individual. We had a great conversation. He talked about several decades of experience that he has, and really some of the things that we talked about throughout the episode include, what got him started in the commercial real estate business, because it's definitely one of the industries that, it seems difficult to break into, but there's different approaches that we discussed that would really focus on trying to break into the business. We talked about how to overcome your first year in brokerage, which is always very difficult for people who are, first starting out in the business. Talked about some of the best ways to generate business as a commercial real estate broker. And then really how the evolution of the brokerage business has occurred over the last 20 years. And then going into the future, what are the new technologies or one of the new approaches that you see as a broker to be able to grow your business and expand your footprint within your market? So there's some phenomenal insights that they provided on both sides of the coin. And so I think this episode is going to be very beneficial, especially for those who are in the brokerage business, whether you're new or experienced. You're going to gain a lot of value from listening to this podcast episode. So really, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into the podcast. Welcome, Senna and Chuck. It's great seeing you guys. You guys are tuning in from the other side of the country, which is always great to tune in and hear you guys. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, guys.
Yeah, no, and for those of you guys who don't know, they're actually tuning in from California, so it's going to be interesting to hear some of their insights that they provide from, the other side of the country. So I'm really excited to dive into this episode and learn a little bit more about what you guys do. So to start off, what we usually do is we ask our interviewees to provide us with a little bit of background on themselves. So if you guys don't mind just providing some feedback as far as, where you come from, what got you into commercial real estate, et cetera.
All right, I'll get started since I've got the little bit more experience. My name is Chuck Littell. I'm with Colliers based out of Los Angeles. I've been an industrial real estate broker for 22 years now. The last 21 of those have been with Colliers. We were a little smaller local firm that's now part of a big corporate entity based out of Toronto. So about 5 years or so ago, I began really focusing on larger users. So that's really what our team does, is we represent large industrial users across the country. So it's interesting, even though we are based in LA, and we certainly are always focused on what's going on here, because, our office is in the same market as the largest industrial market in the country, but we really look at things more from a national basis, because, we do almost as much business around the country as we do locally here in LA.
Yeah, and I'm Senna Cruz. I've been working here for 4 years now. I've been partners with Chuck the whole time, so we almost work seamlessly together, and we have very different roles on the team. I'm more of like the hunter. I'm talking to tenants all day long. I'm kind of cold calling and trying to build relationships. And Chuck he's got all the experience on the team in 22 years, and he kind of account manages and makes sure that nothing falls through the cracks.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know it seems like a great team, and and especially early on in your career, like you're saying, Sen. I mean, it's a lot of getting out there and just meeting as many people as you possibly can in order to develop new business and really maintain relationships and whatever else. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I personally, that was kind of how I just envisioned you always having a pipeline. It's like if you ever stop prospecting or you ever stop building those relationships, I feel like that's kind of the lifeline of your business. And I mean, I've seen other people do it, but I just don't know how, Chuck, I remember you mentioned that there's some people that start off as processors and they stay processors, but I've never really,
No, if you're not, we're in a eat what you kill business. So if you're not out there hunting, you're in trouble. 100%.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100% with that for sure. I kind of wanted to dive in more onto the brokerage side and the real estate for each of you. Can you guys give us a overview of like how you broke into the industry, what got you interested into that? And
I went to school in San Diego at San Diego State, and I sort of fell into a sales job that I liked, but it was I liked the sales aspect, but I knew that there was no career there. So it was purely dumb luck that I met somebody who was a commercial broker with what was called Grubb & Ellis. That's the predecessor to Newmark today. So I was able to grab a spot there. I was really lucky that at the time, the company was really known for exceptional training. They did not do a good job of keeping people once they were up and running, but it was almost more of a commercial real estate university than a company. Their training was absolutely phenomenal. So it was about an 18-month process. I got flown to Chicago, and there was a very intense week-long training program that really, really helped my business. So I was able to, even though I left like everyone else did, because there were some real management issues at the time, I found that I was much more advanced in terms of my training compared to my peers that had been, my contemporaries at the time. So that was a really lucky find. And so in a lot of ways, that's what I tried to recreate for Senna. And we do have a new younger team member that just joined us a few months ago. And so we're using the same program for him as well to get him up and running.
Yeah. To piggyback off that, this is actually kind of a sweet spot for me. And I'm actually going to post on LinkedIn. I'm trying to give as many young kids some value. Last summer, I had seen one of my older buddies from like middle school or high school, and he asked me what I'd been up to. And I was like, oh, I'm in commercial real estate, and it's a lot of fun. It keeps me on my toes. And he said something to me and hit me like a ton of bricks. And he goes, oh yeah, I would have loved to have been real estate or commercial real estate. I just don't have any friends or family that are in it. So like, there was nothing I could do. And I was just like, I didn't even say anything at the time, because I was like, wait a second, you think you need to have friends or family in here to get into the business? And my story, I was looking for internships at school, and I had a buddy who was interning, and he was just kind of like, here's what you do. Every firm has a managing director, and every firm or every managing director has offices that they oversee, and then teams within that office. So just pick up the phone, give the managing director a call, introduce yourself, offer to take them to lunch. I've actually even heard certain managing directors if you get them on the phone the first time, they'll meet you and say, hey, yeah, nice to meet you, happy to help. And then they will purposely not answer your second call and second email to see how serious you are to get into the business. So instead of sending in an application, hoping, I hope I'm one of 1,000 that they pick and, review my resume. Instead, I advise, the younger people, take matters into your own hands, build the relationship so that, you can land the job. And then first day at work, you're just filling out paperwork for, the logistics of it all.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal advice. And especially from someone, in my case, I was a software consultant / engineer for 5 years, and I had no experience within the commercial real estate space. And I did exactly what you did. I just started contacting people. I started reaching out to people who were, like you said, managing directors, people who were owning their own boutique firms. And I just asked them to coffee, and I kept following up and, developed a relationship with a particular brokerage here in Louisville that's more of a boutique brokerage. And, they were doing kind of some cool stuff. And I thought that I could add some value there and, kind of hit it off with the appropriate people. And, here I am. But, that would never have happened had there not been some initiative taken. And like you said, you don't need people to be in the business from a family standpoint or even a friend standpoint. It just shows you have to show initiative, because this business is all about initiative. If you don't have initiative, you're not going to be successful.
One of the pro tips that a really smart guy, when I was quite new in the business, I think I was only a few months off of my training, and I had a client tell me that you work hard and you get lucky. And, I think Senna's story there actually speaks to that, because he worked hard to get in here. I'll never forget, I asked him, why do you want to be an industrial broker as opposed to an office broker? And he said, no, I want to do industrial. And I kind of had an inkling that he was just kind of going off the fly there, and he didn't quite understand the difference. And here we are, coming up on fourth year anniversary. And the absolute best discipline to be in by far is industrial. So he worked hard and he got lucky. So.
Yeah, no. And again, it's deliberate action. You took deliberate action every day, and over time it continues to grow and expand. One thing I wanted to ask that's kind of piggybacking off the breaking into the brokerage, could you kind of tell us a little bit about why, Colliers, was it big versus small brokerages? Because that's something that I get asked a lot, is what are some of the pros and cons of both, and why did you guys decide to go with the larger brokerage? Or at the time when you joined, Chuck, I'm sure it wasn't at the scale it is now, but I thought I'd just ask you as far as some insights that you could provide.
Again, there was sort of a dumb luck aspect in terms of why I landed where I did. It was because I met, I actually started by meeting a broker and then meeting the managing director at the time, who liked that I had some sales experience and wanted to hire me. So, I have thought a lot about that, why not be at a boutique firm? I've just always, I've always felt like I want to be part of a larger organization. I want to be able to, have my clients work with one of our offices elsewhere rather than co-opting it with an outside group. I have done that. I have, co-op deals currently with outside brokers, and Colliers is very entrepreneurial that way. There's not really any kind of reason that we can't work with outside brokers on the same side of the transaction. But I've just always liked the resources of a larger company. I understand that it costs a little bit in terms of the fee splits, but I've always felt that the benefits have outweighed the negatives. And I've really done a lot of internal marketing as well as, external marketing. And that's the reason that it still makes sense to be here.
Awesome.
That's not something when you're at a local only firm, it's not as big a deal, but, building relationships nationally, and, internationally too, in some cases, really does help to grow your business within a larger firm.
Yeah. I mean, I've been here, all 4 years. And what I love about Colliers is it feels to me like almost a flat organization. I don't need to jump through too many hoops to, we're not quite as big as the biggest one, CB, but it kind of feels like we're a medium-sized fish playing in a big pond, and I'm not really stepping on anybody's toes. And if I need an answer, I can get it fairly quickly.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's just a question I generally get asked. So I always like hearing different perspectives from people from all the different parts of, brokerage. So
I'm actually curious to see what other people say too, because I'm sure there's so many benefits and cons to to both.
Yeah, no, it's where I feel like the best answer is where you fit best. You know, what do you like? Who do you get along with? Because if you're going to be dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, you got to like them. Otherwise, it's like, why would I want to be affiliated with an organization if I don't like the people that I'm working with? I don't get the proper support. And, you know, if you feel like you're contributing more than what the organization is contributing to you, then obviously that may not be a good fit. But definitely
my number one sales tip I learned when I was in my youth, and I explain it to these, you know, to Senna and our newer partner. If you're in sales and you don't believe that the product you're selling, or in our case, the service that we're selling, because we're in the service business, and meaning the company that we work for is the best at what they do or you do, then you need to go somewhere else. That's a number one. If you're walking into a meeting and you don't have a real solid belief in what you're doing and what you're there to present to the, you know, as an offering to the clients, forget it.
Yeah, I mean, because it exudes from you, because you lack confidence, and if you lack confidence, people read it, and the people we're dealing with are pretty sophisticated individuals, so you know they'll read you pretty well. So that's great advice. So one thing I wanted to ask is really related to getting started within the business. So that first year in commercial real estate, I mean, I've been through it. It can be a brutal first year. I mean, you're essentially continually reaching out to people. You may not even close a deal for a long period of time. At least that was the case for me. I don't know if that was a similar case for you guys, but can you kind of talk to us a little bit about how did you overcome that, really the first 12 to 18 months within the business, and maybe provide some feedback as far as what newer brokers can do to be able to do so?
I'll take this one first, since I went through it most recently. First off is getting a good senior broker like Chuck. That's number one, because I really feel like he gave me the freedom to really like spread my wings. It was never like, hey, don't call that person, or don't try that yet. It was always just, he gave me a full runway. And I think that is the most important, to find someone who's willing to invest and allow you to grow. But yeah, to your point, Raphael, I think it took me 9 months to close my first deal. And yeah, before that, I was just, getting kicked in the shins, and you go on meetings and, sometimes it feels like a deal and then sometimes it doesn't. That's also one of the big value propositions that a good senior broker brings to the table, is they can see a deal that may not be a deal. And you as a young guy, you're super excited, and, you think it's a deal, but then they're like, hey, maybe you should shift your focus and let that one go. And so, Chuck, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I was really keen on trying to reverse engineer all of my 20 years of experience with Senna, and just say, let's focus much more on what not to do rather than what to do. And then what's to do, what you should do, I should say, that portion of it will just kind of become very obvious and fall into place, because I made, I had the extra benefit because I was at a shop that was a very good school, but not a good brokerage house. Nationally was a great brokerage house, just sort of specifically in my submarket, in my discipline. We were very low on the market share at the time. And so I got the actual benefit of kind of the added benefit with the heavy on the sarcasm of really having a first like 2.5 years rather than a first year, because I came out of my training, I was all geared up, and then I didn't have a good senior team to, I would go find deals. I was bringing them back, and then there was nobody there to help me close them. So it wasn't until I moved over to the Colliers office in our market, and immediately my income tripled, and I had guys to work deals with and had market information to share, that I got market information back. I mean, it was an immediate turnaround. So, but without a doubt, I tell everybody that comes in here, and we do have our youngest team member who's definitely going through it. We can see that he's a few months in. It's tough because there's not a lot of victories to be had in the first few months, as you mentioned, Raphael. But it's that first few years that is, it makes our business unique, because those are such tough barriers. But I think that that's the reason that there's not, streams of people waiting outside, because not a lot of people can handle that first few years. The income is so low, the challenges are so great. it's a really good test of your mettle. If you can make it through the first few years, boy, it just gets easier and easier every year as you get through it. So the main reason that I came into this career, and I'm really glad that I did, is I saw that it was a career business. I saw there was guys that were at that, the company that I first worked, that were there, 20, 30 years, because they could make a living, they could feed their family, they could have a life that was not, causing them to switch jobs every 3 months the way that it was in the other sales job I had. There was no longevity. It was really depressing in that sense.
Yeah, and let me know if you experienced this, Raphael, but for me, I always try to figure out what is the best way to generate business. And I don't think that there is just one best way. That's what I'm kind of telling our younger team member on the team now. My personal, if you guys want to know, my personal way of doing it is I just did my best to get really good on the phones and sound comfortable and sound confident on the phones. I just felt that I could target more in a shorter amount of time. Some people like to door knock. If you're like a good, you like writing, some people do blogs or whatever. If you're big on YouTube and you can generate, business through YouTube. And I just feel like nowadays there's so many different ways to go about it, whether it's networking events. Just me personally, I did whatever I could. I remember I'd be in the shower, just like, going over, or in the bathroom before work, just going over cold calling scripts and talking to myself in the mirror. So that really helped me a lot.
Oh yeah, I know. And we're going to actually dive into some of the one of the questions we have for you guys is the business generation tips. And I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. I've actually done a lot of different things. I know I do a lot of YouTube. I've done podcasting. I run several meetups in town, and I just became like the guy that people think. They're like, oh wait, Raphael, commercial real estate. So it's and I did it in a relatively short period of time through those mediums. I was always in front of people. And I was always going to different events, and, I did a good amount of cold calling, especially initially, just to be able to establish myself in the market. But it's definitely become less of my business generation, just because I've been able to do a lot of other things that have also been generating me opportunities and leads as well. So excited to hear what you guys have to say as far as the other business generation topics.
Yeah, I can actually piggyback off Raphael, since it's kind of the same circles. I'm a commercial general contractor. So, but every time I go to meetups and things, and Raphael and I both have a company together, a development company. And I asked them about him, and oh yeah, I never met him, but Raphael, commercial real estate, it's so what he's been doing around just in this city in general, and even surrounding cities, he's getting known very quickly of what he did. So, I guess right back at you, Senna and Chuck as well. What are you, or I guess Chuck, since Senna has already went through it, what are some good ways that you generated business in CRE? I guess you can even just do someone who's getting started, and what you're doing now to generate more. You
guys have hit it on the head. I've found that, making sure that I can get to every single event that I can, relationships that you can build when you're face to face with somebody. I've never been particularly, the initial phone calls not really been my strength, but when I have an opportunity to meet somebody in person, then I really, I do a much better job of making connections and building business from that. So yeah, we're members of a trucking association that has done a lot for our business. And what I really like and I get excited about is, it sounds like such a dorky word, but, finding good nodes, finding guys that bring you business that, or just help you find resources, and then you get to know them and they get to know you. And so, I can't say that, I always like to point out, Senna, that there's, it's not particularly easy on some of our networking stuff to say, oh, here's we didn't walk in the room and somebody walked up to us and go, oh, I've got a deal for you. But there's all kinds of tangential benefits that you get where, I had a deal where because of our networking event, I helped my client to sell his company. And because I was involved in the sale of the company, I was able to handle all of their real estate. And all of that came from me going once a month to kind of a dreary networking meeting that it was dreary at first because I didn't quite get it. It was a very technical group and a lot of terminology that I didn't understand. But guess what? I ended up becoming an expert in that, and it's all exactly related to supply chain logistics, which is what we do. And I was able to say, I didn't walk in that room and the guy called me up and said, I need you to sell my company and I need you to do all my real estate deals. But it all happened because of the relationship of the guy that I met in that room. So that's the stuff that gets me excited. I like that, finding benefits and appreciating benefits for getting out there and building your brand.
Yeah, I love what you just said about nodes. I think that's extremely important. How many nodes do you have? And obviously you have to dedicate time to these nodes. You have to constantly evaluate how, your time is best spent. But having a certain amount of nodes that you nurture over time is crucial. Building that business sphere, where you have those individuals that can continually refer you deals. I've gotten several opportunities from different residential agents that I know that just don't do commercial deals. They refer over those opportunities to me, and I'm happy to provide them with a referral fee. I've had business bankers, that know me, that say, hey, I got this client that we're servicing for their, inventory. We have a line of credit with them for their inventory, but now they're looking for, some sort of warehouse space or, some other commercial space. And I know you do commercial real estate, so I wanted to refer them over to you. So those type of nodes out there. And then obviously with meetups and podcasting and YouTube, and there's so many different mediums nowadays with technology the way it is that, you can really spread yourself wide. And really with commercial real estate, there's not thousands and thousands of commercial agents out there like there is residential. I mean, at least in our market, we probably have 200, maybe 300 agents. And of those, maybe half or less are the ones who are actually transacting significantly within the market. So if you can be just top of mind, for an individual, it could be, that could get the deal done. So, yeah, I think it's phenomenal advice that you just shared right there. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, was related to, the evolution of CRE brokerage. One of the things that I hear a lot of people say is that commercial real estate brokerage is very much relationship based. And I don't think it's ever going to go away. I mean, it's one of those industries where, it's not going to ever become one that is just becomes, virtual or really you don't have a connection point with your advisor, your broker. But how do you see the brokerage business evolving over the next several decades? There's new technologies that have come out, in particular in larger markets like your own, where there's technologies to be able to efficiently determine, space needs within warehousing, office space, all these different types of property types. So could you tell us a little bit about how do you see the brokerage business evolving, and how, is the broker going to fit into that new reality coming forward?
Well, I'm going to age myself here, and you guys feel free to have your younger guy giggles. But I caught, because I got in the business in the late 90s, I caught the end of the paper age. So, we are very spoiled in LA. We have a really, really good industrial multiple. As far as I know, it's still the only market in the country that has one. There's national multiples that are that just aren't great, but we have a really good local one. And so we were spoiled in the sense that, that we had that multiple before it was all online, but we would literally every week we'd get, a list, printouts of new brochures in the market. We had big folders on each submarket, within, different cities within the submarket. So everything was really just an old fashioned paper business. What I have really seen, and as a result of that, everybody was their focus was really much smaller, because it sort of had to be, because there wasn't the ability for somebody who was 45 minutes, an hour away to be able to grab the information on what was going on in that market. It became, everybody had their fiefdoms. That was their market. Everybody knew their own market, kind of by their very, very well, but there wasn't a whole lot of sharing of information. So it actually ended up, in some ways, it ended up affecting the clients, because whenever clients would say, well, where's the best place to be in the market, everyone was like thinking within their own city. Like they weren't thinking, more from a higher altitude where you could really sort of help the clients better to, locate in one area or not. And I mean, because you got to imagine, you remember, we have 1.6 billion square feet in LA. And to go from one end of our market to the other is, it's an almost 2-hour drive. So, we're a huge market. So you can sort of technically be within LA, but you can be in very different areas. So as things have just gone online and the information flow has gotten so much greater, it's kind of broken down a ton of walls. And I think I've seen that really become a benefit to clients, because it used to be like a really noticeable big event when a tenant moved from one market to the next. And that could have only been by car 15 or 20 minutes away. Now clients are moving from, they're moving 45 minutes, an hour away, and no one's even blinking. It's sort of like all these barriers are gone. And, so I have seen how the technological advances in brokerage have benefited the clients, because it gives them more options. It gives them more information. Still, without a doubt, though, there's that experience and expertise that we bring that I completely agree with you. It's sort of, there's a lot of things that can be, that you can do online that you couldn't elsewhere. And we've seen some clients that have tried to maybe go on and do property searches themselves. And, it's just, it sounds like a silly thing, but you're not going to go try to do some heart surgery yourself. You're going to go find an expert. You'll always benefit. And sometimes it's challenging, especially if a client has not been doing a lot of real estate deals, to understand what the benefits of using an expert are. But I've never had a client at the end go, "Oh, I wish I didn't need you because you didn't add value." They all go, "Oh, I didn't even foresee something coming," or, the way that you helped me to avoid a pitfall with a city or allowable use, or a landlord that's maybe not the best landlord to be a tenant in their building because they don't keep up their buildings, but it looks like it on the outside, but really when it comes down to what you're going to get charged for, all these sorts of things that only being a full-time expert can bring. And, fortunately in our business, like you just said, Raphael, I mean, in residential, and here's a commercial guy that's not speaking well of residential, surprise, but there are a lot of I've met some very smart people that do that, who are good experts. They add tons of value in their deals. And then there's a lot of part-timers. So that's, we don't have that in our business, which is good. There's not part-timers. You're either in all the way or forget it.
You don't survive. I mean, if you're a part-timer, you're not going to make it.
No, there's no such thing.
Yeah. And Raphael, you mentioned this earlier. I think speaking on the business development front, I think that is changing a lot as well, right? I think back in the day, you were a little bit more of, like Chuck was saying, your local market expert. You were handing out flyers. You were going door to door, introducing yourself. Now, if you utilize technology and the platforms on the internet, you can grab a market's attention. And then once the attention is on you and you demonstrate yourself as the expert, they'll reach out to you, right? Whether it's a YouTube channel. And Raphael, you did a great job. I think that this is how we got connected. And we connected with each other, and then I'd comment on something and you'd always comment back every time. You made it a point. If I send you a message, you'd always get back. So it's the little things like that people think, what's that going to do? Or what's the point of that? But if people just know that they show up every day and they make as many connections and do their best themselves to be a node, then it'll all come back to them.
Yeah, I mean, you just make yourself a resource, and then again, it's the concept of reciprocity, right? Because we're humans. Everyone has a desire to help others, and if you outwardly help others in your profession, naturally it's going to come back to you. At least that's what I believe. I'm a very optimistic person, and I believe there's abundance in this world. So that's the type of mindset that if you have over time is going to lend itself very well to any type of business, not just commercial real estate. So. No, I 100% agree with you guys, and I'll even piggyback off the technological side of things that you were mentioning, Senna, which is the YouTube, podcasting, etc. I mean, when people do business with someone, before they do business with someone, they want to first off know them. So that means that they first have to know who you are, which is that means you cold call them, or you door knock, or they watch a YouTube video, etc. And then they have to learn to trust you. So if you have content online, at least this is something that I'd love to say, is that it allows them to research you. Because if I learn about you and just say, okay, well, Senna, you reached out to me on LinkedIn. I don't really know a lot about them. Let me go do a search on Google. So what happens? I'm going to do a search on you. I'm going to try to see what other content you've created online, whether that's blogging or YouTube or whatever. And then you just start going down the rabbit hole, especially if you have the right content. I've had several people that have reached out to me that have said, I watched several of your YouTube videos, or, I saw what you posted on LinkedIn and, started doing a little bit of research on you. I saw you write a book, that sort of thing. And all of a sudden now it's the trust factor comes into play. So even before I've met with them, there's just the barriers dropped. Right. Because now it's like, okay, they've watched several of my videos. They can kind of tell whether or not they would like me or not. And, at that point, it's just more talking about their needs, what they want, et cetera. And I've felt like there's a lot less friction when it comes to meeting someone for the first time when they've watched a YouTube video or read a blog post or, that sort of thing, versus just me interacting with them for the first time without ever having any other contact point beforehand. So that's the type of,
you just described the modern referral. In the olden days, the referrals only came from literally somebody saying, hey, who should I use in this area or this, this market? And you get a referral. And, I could see very on from the early days of my career, and it's only continued. When you have somebody who comes to you through a referral, 80% of your relationship building is done because they trust the other person that referred you in, so they trust you, and everything falls apart in what we do if your clients aren't trusting you, because we bring expertise to the table, and if they're not trusting your expertise, then you got nothing, literally. So you're finding a new way. And I'll say that it's, I'm not sure how many older guys are listening to this, because older guys are stuck in their ways, but get a younger guy to help you to understand how important, the change in the way that things are done is because, I didn't focus as much on my LinkedIn profile and built in getting on podcasts and marketing different ways. And, having a younger team member has been great in that aspect, and I've really enjoyed it. I look forward to doing lots more of it.
Yeah. And I guarantee you that, this effort that you're putting in, the fact you're on this podcast, the fact that, you guys are actively engaging online is going to pay dividends long-term, because you'd be very surprised with how little people do, just in my market. I mean, we're not as large of a market as LA or anything like that, but there's really no one producing a significant amount of video content or podcasting or anything like that. And I'd imagine in LA, you'd be surprised with the amount of people that are actually doing it on a consistent basis. So if you can become that one person or those two people, I mean, you could capitalize greatly. Because even if you think about it, you get one or two more deals a year through those types of mediums. I mean, we're talking large transactions. These aren't small transactions. So, it could be well worth your time to explore as an opportunity. So,
yeah, that's the caveat there, right? Because I'm guilty of it. You post for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you're like, okay, I'm done. But it's the consistency that it really makes the difference.
Yeah, but another thing is, like, consistency is obviously key, and I think that's the most important thing. But once you start building up a repository, I've seen people. There's this guy called Davide Pio, I think his name is. He's from San Francisco. He created YouTube videos back in the day in like 2013, and he stopped producing videos in 2014. The guy's like 10,000 subscribers. And it's just because he made those videos long ago, and he made really great content. He talks about commercial real estate concepts. And I guarantee you this guy's getting business from those YouTube videos, because he's got like 8,000 or 9,000 views on each of his videos. And it's like, recurring thing. And that's just effort that he created a long, long time ago. It's not something that he's continually updating, and that's why I'm such a big proponent on content creation. If you can write like a blog or a book about your experiences in the brokerage business, I would highly recommend it. I wrote a book called Before You Sign That Lease, which is essentially a book that kind of explains how do you lease commercial real estate. And I send that in the packet to my potential clients. And I can't tell you the response that I've gotten, the improvement in response that I've gotten. They look at the book, they're like, oh my gosh, like this is awesome. So it helps, alleviate some of that initial barrier. Because really what we're trying to do is break the barrier for potential clients so that they can trust us. And then from that point, you become that trusted advisor, and now you just got to execute. So
yeah, that's a awesome. Good point. If you just put out the value and leave it there, then it's almost like compound interest at that point, right?
100%, really.
I think in roundabout way, you brought up something that is I don't know if it's an old guy thing or personal, but something that an improvement that I want to make. That's Googling myself more. I hate doing that so much. I can't stand Googling myself, but I do need to do it better. So I need to make sure that the right links are there and the right content. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So one thing I wanted to ask you guys, and this is something more so for younger brokers, and really anyone in their brokerage career. What are some of the best resources that you use in order to really refine your craft within the brokerage business?
You know what? I was having this conversation last night. It's funny. Really just the Google, right? You can learn so much on the internet. It blows my mind how, my parents' generation, if they wanted to learn something, they had to get their happy self off the couch, get in the car, go to a library, figure out, okay, I think that book's going to help me, and read about it. And maybe it didn't help them, right? But here, like you said, Raphael, you see some guy on YouTube or you see some guy consistently posting articles and he's got, X amount of views and people are getting value from it. It's literally you're seconds and fingertips away from learning it. So if you just kind of Google, how to get into commercial real estate, or you'll find guys like you and other people on YouTube that have done the work and put the content on the internet.
Oh yeah, I kind of want to bounce off that. I like how you said that you're finding people that are in that realm, but just with you two gentlemen here, it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm speaking for you, but Chuck, you're essentially mentoring Senna and stuff and going through all the steps, and I think that right there, that to me, that's the number one resource you can have, is a great mentor who's already been doing it for over 2 decades. That's priceless in my opinion. Like, how can you put a number on that? And that's huge. I think that would help someone tremendously. Even if you go outside your market, like someone's on the East Coast and have a brokerage, well, reach out to someone on the West Coast. Maybe maybe they will take the time to give you some advice, or become your mentor. Yeah.
Funny, sometimes not specifically on mentoring, but just in terms of like using resources and such. Senna and our other partner, we'll be trying to research a client or just find some information. And I think because of my old school training, I used to actually, when we would, there was times I'd have arguments with friends over drinks, and you were stuck on a fact, and you'd have to go down to the library and pull up the index cards and print out microfiche, and then come back the next day and go, dude, look, I'm not, whereas now you can just Google everything. But I think it sort of helped me to enjoy the detective aspect of it. And sometimes, even though Senna and our other young guy grew up more in a technological, they always had Google. They never lived in a world without it. Sometimes there's just sort of links and just digging around, and you're looking for little, get a little creative in the way that you search something or whatever. They'll miss opportunities to find some information that I can find, which is weird because obviously I very well remember the world before Google. And I remember the first time somebody said, why don't you try that? I'm like, what is that? So that was like 2003. Yeah. And that really changed things.
And let me know if you agree, Chuck, but there's some people in the industry that are a little bit more, walking around the office that could seem a little bit more closed off, or they seem a little bit more focused, and maybe they always got their doors shut. I maybe Chuck, can agree that I was kind of a pain in the butt in the beginning, because I was always asking him for things, and I was always, seeking knowledge. So, my advice would be, do your best to find the answer on your own. And then if you have a good senior broker, ask them. And then, if you can't find it there's other people in the office that are willing to help as well. But you just have to take the initiative and, reach out.
Yeah, that's what I did. I worked at a shop that had a lot of different brokers and a lot of different disciplines. And I imagine your market's different in the sense that you kind of have to do a little bit of everything, right? A little retail, a little industrial, a little bit of office. Is that correct, Raphael? And
and it's in particular my brokerage, right? Because I'm in a boutique brokerage, but yeah, some of the guys at CBRE and JLL, et cetera, they're going to be on a team, like an industrial team, or we have a decent sized market. We're about a 1.3 million or 4 million people in the city. So we do like our local market, and then the region. Like we have a Kentuckiana region, which is like southern Indiana, that encompasses another couple thousand people. So it's a decent sized market.
We just finished some business in Hebron, Kentucky, which is part of the Cincinnati market.
Oh yeah.
So we helped a client into their facility there. So, but my point is, at my shop, and more specifically in LA, there's strictly multifamily people, of course. There's strictly industrial, strictly office, because each discipline has such a big market to work. So I did a good job of just being curious, and I always stayed late. I always, when I catch people, hey, what's going on? I would just talk deals with them all the time. And so I picked up a lot from that. And part of the mistake I made is I sort of tried to get every piece of business I could rather than just focusing on my own discipline. So I had to sort of refocus, and that really helped me a lot.
That's amazing. Yeah, those are both phenomenal pieces of advice. Getting really clear on what your objective is huge. And, that thought process that is, not asking people questions that you could just Google, right? That's one of the things that I learned from my previous employer is that we had a problem solving list, and it's like, okay, first try this, then try this, then try this, then try this. After you complete this, it doesn't work, then you start looking for answers. But you'd be amazed with the response that you get from someone, in particular those who are really putting in time to help you develop. If you can come to them and say, you know what, like this is what my problem is. I've tried this. This is what happened. I tried this. I tried this. I tried this. Then I tried this, and for some reason it's not working. Where am I missing? Something. That's going to give you a much better response than saying, hey, how do I do this? When you could have just Googled it and taken 5 minutes out of your day to figure out what exactly you're doing. So I think those are both great pieces of advice.
Speaking of advice, there's a question that we love to ask people that we have on the podcast. And if you can go back to your younger self, what advice would you give them? And it can be, you don't have to go far back as like childhood if you don't want to. It could just be getting at the very beginning of just commercial real estate. But if you could go back, yeah, what advice would you give?
Well, I got lucky in the sense that I did over time. I got trained up and I found success, but I would have definitely shortened the cycle if I would have only focused on starting in the business as a newbie on an already successful team. That would have really shortened my ramp up time by probably 5 years, because I had to go sort of do it on my own. That would be the number one thing I would say. Make sure to begin the business, just speaking to what we were earlier about modeling and mentoring, find some successful guys that are in the business or gals and go work for them and learn from them.
I would echo that 100%. Like, I can't imagine if I would have, been working my tail off and brought in deals back and, met with clients, and then I didn't have someone like Chuck to help me close the deals in the first couple of years. It would have drove me nuts, for sure. And this is kind of what helped me, or what I would give my younger advice. It sounds kind of maybe cliche, but slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I was very, I'd try and skip steps, and I'd get so excited and, want to get the deal done, or, I'd want to make sure I was doing everything correctly. So I'd do it as fast as possible, but you can just take a deep breath, think about everything, sleep on it. That really helps.
That was my favorite thing that I learned later in life, because I was, for not as much lately, but for a good stretch there, I was really involved with CrossFit, and the coach there was really keen on slow is fast, and it applies to everything in life. If you rush through something, you don't take a second to just, think through what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Even though it seems like you're slowing down, you're actually speeding up the process, because you're avoiding mistakes that are a huge time suck. Yes, avoid mistakes. So that's really, and that's what I think what we try to translate to our clients. It's almost like more than anything, we try to help our clients avoid pitfalls. That's our number one goal.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, 100%. And again, given the size of deals you guys are working on, I mean, one pitfall could really be catastrophic for your clients. So yeah, I think that's some, great advice. Just take your time and understand it's a long game, right? When you got in, Chuck, you saw the longevity of people who were in the business for 20, 30 years, and you knew that the potential was there, but you have to be diligent about your craft every single day, and eventually you'll get there. Because I've definitely met a lot of people that, obviously the commercial real estate business can be quite lucrative, but it's one of those things that it takes some time, and it takes a lot of effort on the front end to get going. And so if you get disheartened easily because, you put in a lot of effort and you have no fruits to show for it within a relatively short period, those are the people that just don't last. So
yeah, I remember a guy that when I was just about to start in the business, and I heard another young guy who was going around and getting interviewed, and he was, very dismissive of how the kind of starting salaries back then, there were still worse starting salaries. Now it's kind of almost directly right into draws and commissions for young guys. But, how it was so much lower than he was offered from a bank or something. And, but it didn't take me long to figure out a few years later, okay, that's true. But let's go to year 3 and year 4 and look at where the income levels are. And, they were so many multiples above even making up for those first few years. So, but I think the other thing that, I do try to, and, instill in Senna and our other young members, it takes real guts to do this job. And so you have to, don't be afraid to be appreciative that you have the guts to do it, because a lot of people, you're like, hey, I got a great job for you, got no income whatsoever. And they say, well, wait a minute, if that's the possibility, never mind the upside. All they'll focus on is the downside, and they just, they're like, I could never do that. I could never do. I mean, that's vast majority of people. So if you're able to be one of the people who's got the cojones to pull it off, be proud. You should be.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, you're just betting. You're betting on yourself, right? If you get up every day and you do your best, like, good things will come. Like, I think sometimes people can say, oh, I'm going to take the safe route. But really, it's like that almost will, like, that's almost the unsafe route, because now you're not growing, you're not learning something new. And I think that you'll have more holes at the end of the day if you take that route. So always just continue to bet on yourself, because it sounds so cliche, but that's the best investment, especially when you're young.
Well, and people don't think about opportunity cost, right? They just see the direct lack of salary or lack of opportunity, quote unquote, but they don't see the opportunity cost of slaving, or not necessarily slaving away, but if you're in a profession for 20, 30 years, that's not directly correlated to your, effort and growth. I mean, what's the opportunity cost there 20, 30 years down the line, So I think that those individuals who analyze both options, they say, okay, am I willing to bet on myself and understand that the first couple of years are going to be tough, that I'm going to be rejected a lot, that I'm going to be, put on the essentially against the wall. But, I know that over the course of my career, I have what it takes to be successful, and so that I think there's a certain individual that kind of has that wiring. And in order for you to be successful, I think you almost have to have that.
Raphael, I wanted to ask you, how long did it take you? Like, what was the time period? Because you said you were in software before. Like, what was the mental timeline of, like, was it weeks? Was it months? Was it a year? Where you were kind of going back and forth, should I stay in this, or should I, take the leap of faith? Like, how long was that mental?
So it was in the works for a while. I knew that it wasn't what I want to do long term. I was traveling a lot. I was moving every year and a half. So I had been planning a little while to do it. One of the things that I think that kind of accelerated the timeline was I bought a 4-unit property, a fourplex. I lived in one of the units and then rented out the other. So my expenses were very low, right? So I had almost my mortgage payment was covered by the other rents that were in the building. And, I had saved up a good amount of money through my previous job to be able to sustain myself for more than that. It was almost a 12 months. Like, if I didn't make any income for 12 months, I'd be okay. And then obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of the brokerages, especially the ones that, are a little bit larger, but even some of the boutique brokerages, they offer like a draw. So I was able to get a draw for my salary. And, I didn't start garnering any income until I paid back the draw. And, I eclipsed that draw just past my first year. I was about a year and 3 months in is when I eclipsed the draw. And ever since then, I've been on straight commission. And so, I think there were a few things that allowed me to do it. Obviously, number one, my expenses were very low. I had a good amount of capital reserves in place. And then the draw helped a little bit with that. But my draw was very low. It was like 20 grand or something like that. So,
and so were you already reading books, or what gave you the tip to go by that 4-unit? Or just
Bigger Pockets. I was following a website called Bigger Pockets, which is one of the largest investor websites in the world, and they talked about the concept of house hacking. I read the book called Set for Life by Scott Trench, And it talked about the house hacking process and how really a lot of people, what they focus on is like not going out to eat and all this other stuff. But in reality, you need to focus on your top 3 expenses, which is obviously number 1 is rent or mortgage. Number 2 is transportation. And number 3 is food. So, I was able to eliminate the number 1 expense, which was the mortgage or the rent. That put $1,500 or so in my pocket. Right. So, how many expenses can you pay for in 1 month with $1,500? Here in Louisville, it's a lot more achievable than maybe in LA or whatever. But even if the concept's the same, like if you do the same thing in LA, if your rent's $800 a month after you pay your mortgage, like that could save you a significant amount of money. So it's that was my logic when I did it. It definitely helped a lot because it helped alleviate some of the pressure, because I know, especially when you first start off in the brokerage business, you can feel somewhat desperate because it's like, oh my God, there's no income coming in, and that can radiate when you're interacting with people. And so I didn't really have that because I had the reserves in place. I was living in a 4-plex and was able to alleviate some of the financial responsibilities that I needed. And then from there, I was able to interact with clients from their best interest. I didn't need the deal to close, essentially, right off the bat. So
yeah, you'll never. There's another approach, because I've been there. If you need a deal to close, it will never close. You have to be client focused and just say, do the deal or not. Here's all the best information for you to make the decision, and you make deals. If in any way the client or you are pushing and you got to make the deal, it won't happen.
100%.
Because it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. 100%.
And if they feel that, it might happen, just not with you, right?
Yeah. There's nothing worse than a client feeling like you're pushing them to a deal for your own interest. I would never do that.
Well, it's your reputation's at stake. And if you're in the business for a long period of time, that's your most valuable asset is your reputation. So, you never want to put yourself in a position where you're potentially damaging your reputation. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that is critical. It's never good to do a bad deal. And if a client feels like they got the short end of the stick because you represented them incorrectly, because you didn't advise them correctly, that just damages your reputation. And if you're going to be in that market for a long period of time, that's not a good thing.
Yeah. So, one of the tips that I gave Senna is I used to, when I was new at the business and something would happen where a client turned out not to be as good an opportunity as we thought, or, trust and respect's got to work both ways. So maybe it's not somebody that really you want to spend a lot of time with because they're not going to honor your time. When reality would hit, and I know that, it was time to walk away from the transaction or the client relationship because there just wasn't going to be a fruitful one. I would find that to be a really, that was a hard challenge that I would have to overcome, and it would take me a few days to kind of get back on my feet or something. Now I find that it's the greatest news that we can get in our day, because it means we're going to stop working on something that's not going to be fruitful in the end. And so the sooner we find out, the better. It's great news. So when I was able to, to figure that out about our business and not get stuck when things didn't go the right way, which happens a lot.
Yeah,
that really helped.
That's kind of going back to having a good senior broker, right? As a young guy, you're maybe a little hesitant to initially ask the hard questions, when the more experienced guy goes in there and gets to the bottom line very quickly.
Yeah.
And you save time. I mean, when I first started, I worked with a lady for 2 years, and it didn't pan out. The deal didn't pan out, and I'd worked with her for hours and hours and hours and hours. And Jeff knew. He was kind of involved with the whole process, and didn't pan out. And I probably invested at least 100 hours into trying to get this thing squared away, and it just never worked out. But now you learn the lessons, and you move on and try to do better the next time. So
you have to focus on the needs and not the wants. The wants don't make, the needs do.
Exactly. So one of the questions we love asking our guests, because a lot of our listeners love reading and growing and personally and professionally. So could you tell us a little bit about maybe one of the most impactful books you guys have ever read that you'd like to share with the audience?
The one that stuck out the most recently was Thomas Keller from Keller Williams. He wrote the book, The One Thing. So that's actually the reason that I'm sitting next to Senna, because I read that book and I was sort of, I needed a push. I needed to do something different. And the most important, after reading that book, I determined that the most important thing I needed to do was to build my team. And so I literally stopped everything I was doing. That was something that was a real game changer for me, because I would have never felt comfortable stopping my day-to-day activities on business generation and business processing to work on something long-term. And it's really been a huge benefit. So the one thing was recently the thing that the book, I should say, that I found most impact to my business. It really helped me to find my one most important thing to improve my business.
Yeah, I read that book, phenomenal book. One of the ones that really, I think, made an impact on me was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I read the book and I listened to the audiobook, and it's phenomenal. For me, it was a book that was written in a way that you don't really have to say, oh, wait, what was that line he said on page 56 or whatever. It really just helped me embody, the art of negotiation and just kind of staying calm, asking the right questions in a certain tone. Because at the end of the day, right, it's like an information gathering session. That's one of the big points in the book. And I highly recommend any of the listeners to read that book.
Yeah, no, I love both those books. I think those are phenomenal reads. And with the Never Split the Difference, the tonality, being able to kind of mirror people and make them feel at ease. Because again, when you're dealing with in negotiations, a lot of times it can be a confrontational experience if you let it be that way. And when it gets to a point where it gets very confrontational, it's hard to strike a deal when both sides are kind of on their heels. And so, being able to get into a point where you can both rationally discuss a deal and negotiate appropriately and show that there is some negotiation potential, I think that's huge. And The One Thing is a phenomenal book as well. I really did enjoy that one. And again, it just goes to show how beneficial focus can be on anything you approach, not just in business.
So to start rounding off the end of the podcast, we have a CRE treasure chest. It's a repository of things that people in the past have gave us. It's something that we like to give to our audience. It's free. So we'd like to ask, what are you willing to give and add to the CRE treasure chest so we can pass that on to the viewers and the audience?
We have a great team that just does research here. So we've got a national report that just came out about ports and logistics, and I was quoted in that, which was nice. So we can send that out. It's a great guide for what's going on, because we haven't talked about the specifics of our discipline, but right now there's a lot of problems in getting stuff on store shelves. So this is a good research report on that.
Yeah, me being a commercial general contractor, I know all too well. So I would love to read that report about ports and see what's going on.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it is.
So. Yeah, it's amazing how much certain prices of raw materials have increased over the last year and a half. Steel prices have shot through the roof. Wood. Everything you can think of related to building components has just been astronomical, and it's forced a lot of developers to rethink their plans as it pertains to, just even developing a project. So yeah, it's interesting. So just to round out the interview, first off, we just want to thank you guys so much for stopping by. I really do appreciate you guys just sharing all your insights. But if people wanted to get in contact with you guys or learn a little bit more about you, and really just be able to reach out, what are the best ways to do that?
Find us on LinkedIn. We're very active. We're very quick to answer our messages, and you can always find find us on the Colliers website as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll include both those links for both Senna and Chuck as well on the show description. So if you guys are listening to this on a Apple Podcast medium, just feel free to drop in the description and grab their contact info. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to go in the description, and both those contact information links will be there as well. So first off,
if anybody's reaching out to us, don't start by saying that you're offering us an auto warranty, because we might hang up on you, but otherwise we're happy to help. Seems like half my calls, I'm like, oh, new client? Oh, auto warranty, thanks.
Home warranties are okay, but auto, no.
Yeah, I don't even know.
That's the no-go. No, that's awesome. No, but I'm sure that you'll get some people to be reaching out to you. I've definitely had people reach out regarding the guests that we've had on the show. So looking forward to hearing your guys' feedback as far as the episode's concerned. Those are guys who are listening. But thanks for listening to this podcast. If you'd like to leave us a 5-star review, please do so on Apple Podcasts. and drop a comment in there as well. We'd like to hear you guys' feedback regarding the content that we to produce. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm, ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.